Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for us today. Apologies, we are 10 minutes into the time. We just had a few technical issues that we're sorting out currently, but thank you all the same for. I'll just give a minute more, probably to have more people join us, and then we will start. So just a moment. Thank you. Okay, so I think we can kick off. Good afternoon from Nigeria and from any other part of the world you're joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and we're excited to be bringing you this webinar. My name is Sharon Rehoboth. I am a knowledge transfer manager with Innovate UK, Global Alliance Africa in Nigeria. And I'm excited to be supporting the Green Building Council Nigeria to host this webinar today. I know it's going to be a revolutionary one. I don't know how many of you are already in the sector, or you're just joining, or you're an enthusiast. Anyone you are, just know that you are welcome, and we're looking forward to having great conversations today. So right about now, I would introduce the panelists that we have, really seasoned individuals. I have had the privilege to interact with them, and I will be introducing them today. So I will start with Leah. Leah is an experienced project manager, and she specializes in circular economy. She's had experience in delivering multi-million technical or multidisciplinary projects in energy, rail, water, maritime, and civil engineering fields. Lee is also a specialist in sustainable innovation and strategic project delivery. She's also a member of the UKRI board, and she has a knack for sustainability when it comes to material reuse and waste reduction. Lee works with Arup in London. Thank you, Lee, for joining us. And Lee is going to be one of our panelists this morning. She's also going to be making the presentation that would start off the webinar. And joining Lee is Shauna. Shauna is a chartered resources and waste manager with an extensive experience delivering expert advice solutions for resource and waste management on major schemes across Africa and the Middle East. She has a very strong background in large multidisciplinary projects, which allows her for valuable contributions to key projects such as sustainable waste and resource management. And large works include construction, demolition, and excavation waste management, waste impact assessment as well. Thank you, Lee, for joining us. Lee is going to be one of our panelists, and Lee is also from Arup in the UK. And Leah and Shauna will be taking us through the first round of presentations. And I believe there's a poll. We'll have a poll that will be showing up on your screen shortly, where it would ask you a few questions just to know your level of interaction with sustainability and with the sector, and know how we can progress in answering some of your questions this morning. And just to say that I see you might have two Leahs on your screen, but part of the technical issues we're still trying to sort out. Leah is the lady with the glasses, and Shauna is without the glasses, just so you don't get confused. But I'll be handing over to both of them now to start off with the presentation. So Leah, Shauna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to share my screen, see if it works. Right. Everybody see that? Yes, I'm going to take that as a yes. All right, well, thank you very much for the introduction and for having us in the first place. It's our pleasure to be here. The goal for us is to pretty much present at a broad level what circular economy is. And then Shauna will be talking more about specialist waste reduction strategies, and then we'll be answering questions and hopefully have an engaging discussion. So circular economy at a very broad level. First of all, why does that concern us? Why the built environment? Well, as you probably know, emissions from materials are getting bigger, and it is one of the most polluting industry, especially in buildings and construction. Hence why we are focusing on this industry as well. Of course, there's several others, but this one being one of the main ones. Circular economy in the wider context. So it came about, I mean, obviously it's been around for about 50 years now, and even we could say forever to some extent, because it's pretty much going back to nature cycles. But in this industry particularly, it's been growing in the last 20 years. So our current linear economy is, well, I'll start with the why we're here first of all, I guess. World Economic Forum has mentioned circular economy, the UK government, there is the EU as well. We also have the Green Future developed by the British government. And then on the right is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is international. So it has definitely gained an international significance. And also in the more technical aspects of things, the decarbonization field past 2080 has been referring to circular economy in their decarbonization guideline, and BREEAM as well in terms of resource efficiency also mentioned circular economy. And in the middle, the circular economy is, what does it really mean? It is an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design, which aims to keep product components material at their highest utility and values at all time. And there are three principles driven by design, which are eliminate waste and pollution, circulate products and material at the highest value, and regenerate nature. We'll obviously go in more detail about them later. So why circular economy to some extent? Why is it relevant to sustainability? So the current economy is linear. Again, we'll explain later, but pretty much it's unsafe, unsustainable. I think we can all acknowledge that it's not working. And then the world, the UN in general, just everybody agrees that the SDGs are the way to solve it to some extent. Where does the circular economy come in place? I know a lot of people see it as the end to some extent, as we need to aim for a circular world, but it is more mean to an end. It is a mindset to some extent. If we change so many things, our business models, our strategies, the way we build buildings in a circular manner, then it will enable us to accomplish the SDGs. I guess it's the best way to kind of explain how does it work. And then, so circular economy principle, design out waste and pollution. The point is to continuously cycle at the highest value for as long as possible. In multi-stakeholder models, the circular economy seeks to unite parties within the value chain to design out waste and avoid emissions. Can keep products and material in use for as long as we can, to reuse them. Both old and new buildings, there is high technical and commercial challenges to preserve material. But if we can tackle them at the beginning in terms of design for disassembly or longevity or many others that we'll discuss later, it should be leveraged to ensure many material cycles, and then regenerate nature, such as carbon sequestration and many others that will be discussed later as well. Sorry, I'm trying to go as fast as I can because the goal is to have a great conversation at the end of it, and you probably all know this stuff anyways. So I was saying before, the world at the moment is linear. So take, make, and dispose, use and dispose. That is pretty much based on the Friedman doctrine, which was set up in the 70s ish, but which is great. That was aimed to reboost the economy and to construct and to produce as fast as we could. But it's just not sustainable nor relevant in these days. So ideally, we have to move from this, which is a circular model, because we all know that resources are finite and we need to pretty much try to use what we have currently here as much as we can, and if not, take new materials, but save them as much as we can and reuse them as much as we can to minimize the use of new resources. So the circular economy is based on a 9R framework. So I know there is the reuse, reduce, reuse, recycle 3R framework that's been very common, but it's quite limited to some extent. So scholars have developed a 9R frameworks, which aims to, I guess, yes, we are circular economy is closing the loop, but I think it's about slowing down the loop because we'll never be able to fully close it. So to some extent, there are several strategies for that. You can a smarter material or product use, whatever you want to use in manufacture, which would be refuse, rethink, and reduce, as in refuse to even build something new, rethink your original design, or reduce the material use, or that could apply with saying material, but that could generally apply to product or to anything else. And then expand the lifespan of your product and its parts or your materials. Again, product and materials kind of go hand in hand depending on which industry you're talking about. And that's what I meant by slowing down the resource loop in terms of reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, and repurpose. So the materials are here. Yes, you do need them to begin with, but you try to keep them as long as possible. And then after, well, that's why you close it sometimes. That's it. They've used, you can't use them anymore. They've reached the end of life. And that's when you recycle and recover them. So circular economy can be achieved at a highest level possible if we use all these three strategies: material and design strategy, business strategy, and life cycle assessment. They can very much work on their own, but ideally you need to always think about them three together. Material and design strategies. So you can design for deconstruction and flexibility, for outside construction, using cradle to cradle materials, designed for waste efficient procurement, reuse and recovery of materials, or material optimization. And the goal of that is to reduce resource consumption. Business strategies that could apply in terms of residual value, flexible asset, performance procurement, relocatable assets, and product as a service. In this industry, it could be having, for example, a supplier that would have a circular business model, such as only dealing with secondhand steel or glass and then recovering them at the end. That is part of their service, and they come and they repair and maintain that product as well while it is still in use. And then life cycle assessment strategy, I believe Shauna will be talking more about that later, but it is mainly about embodying whole life carbon reduction and maintenance cost reduction and the whole big picture of the asset pretty much. So there are several design strategies, again, slowing the resource loop and closing the resource loop. We just find this difference again, to make sure that your product material, again, very much interlinked, the life can last as long as possible. You design for reliability, durability, attachment and trust, upgradability and adaptability. Now you can also extend the life cycle, which would be ease for maintenance, standardization, compatibility, designed for dis and reassembly. And then, well, sometime again, it's just done. So that's why you design for technological cycle, which is extending the value by recycling over and over again, or even a bit more complex one, which is biological cycle, which is industrial symbiosis. And because this is a weird, complicated name, I've put a diagram, kind of explains it. There's a Kalundborg symbiosis up in the Nordic countries. It's pretty much all of the same companies and industries set up shop in the same area, and they all use each other. So like one would have wastewater that the other one would use to then do whatever they want with it, energy, and then it's just like materials, water, and energy, they all feed off each other to some extent. So it's like clusters to some extent. So that is one way of attaining sustainable circular economy. Adopting a value chain. So pretty much circular economy, ideally just like anything else really, we all exist in a system. It just can't exist on its own. If let's say we have designers designing for circular buildings and you don't have anybody else advocating for it or agreeing to it, then it won't work. We need every single stakeholders involved in a collaborative approach, and they need to be aware and have the right skills in order to make it happen. We've had so many stories where we've finally got a win, we've finally got people to agree to our design, the clients pay for everything, and then we arrive on site and contractors just broke everything. So it just, or it was the other way around. Contractors were helping us, and then designers didn't kind of allowed for that, let's say, deconstruction instead of demolition. And it's just, so it pretty much shows that everything has to work together, otherwise it just doesn't work. Potential new value models that the circular economy would bring, it would be sharing and collaboration platform, design for adaptability in the construction, circular economy plans for projects, so more like roadmaps, like we've seen loads of governments producing their own, procurement as a service, and as well targeted automation and inspection and maintenance. That is just one case study that Arup wrote, but it is a really good example in terms of where is the value lost in buildings and property mainly. So the findings were that it is underutilized space, buildings are being demolished prematurely, land being vacant and being bought at a higher price, and they just build whatever they want on it, but it could just be used for something else, depreciated building materials and underperforming components. All these could be fixed by relocatable or flexible or automated and better maintained spaces that would avoid having value lost so significant. What are the key drivers of circular economy? And I'm taking forever, so I'm going to rush through that. But pretty much, as you can all guess, is the competitors, loads of companies are already buying into it, especially in the EU and governments that are in countries where governments are very much pushing it. Policy and regulation is aligned to that, value alignment with customers, planetary boundaries, carbon emissions, market as well, because as we'll you probably know and we'll discuss later, but it has obviously, circular economy has a triple bottom line, which is the people, planet, and the economic value of it as well. So definitely can bring loads of it can boost the market both for people in terms of employment and as well revenue and return on investment. So what are the benefits and opportunities for circularity? Whole life cost efficiency, localized supply chain, long-term resilience, improved delivery times, whole life carbon reduction, resource efficiency, reduce landscape and habitat disruption, and enhance social value. So again, it all goes back to a triple bottom line. It tackles all three of them. I won't go through that one in detail, but it pretty much goes back to what I was saying earlier of the whole value chain. Everybody has a role to play and everybody has to be aligned. So either you're a client, a designer, a contractor, a supplier, or just in charge of asset maintenance and operation. Everybody has a role to play and can very much make an impact. So that is our sustainability services. The point of that was to pretty much show that circular economy exists in a system as well. It's not a one-off, so it will tackle it. We would be working hand in hand, for example, with net zero strategy experts and social value and BREEAM expert. That would be more Shauna's department. She will talk about that later. But anything that is carbon and social value, strategy, foresight kind of things as well. It all goes hand in hand. So, and then also about Arup, we developed with EMF a circular building toolkit, which is really good in terms of visualizing and helping you. You can either have it as a workshop or just even kind of playing around with it. It will tell you the strategies such as build nothing, build for long-term value, efficiently with the right materials. And then within that, it will give you strategies such as refuse new construction, increase building utilization, design for longevity, adaptability, disassembly, increase material efficiency, and all of that. It's very much open source. You guys can go online, just type circular building toolkit. And also a good thing, it kind of explain what circular economy is in a whole, because you could replace buildings with whatever else product or whatever, and the concept is just there, like do not produce anything, do not or produce for long-term value, which is just kind of very high level first step of using applying circular economy principles pretty much. So the way we would kind of apply it on a live project in buildings, it would be this diagram that I appreciate is a bit complex, but the point of it is when we have clients, for example, asking us for a new project, they want a new building or they want to demolish or something like that. we would be walking them through this question, which is there an existing building on site? Yes. Right. Is it technically feasible to retain the value, the building in whole or in part? Yes or no? And then, well, you can read them yourself, but it's very much how we would make a decision on either, yes, we can demolish, can we deconstruct? Yes, you need a new building. Perhaps we could retrofit. Perhaps we could just keep the facade and then, or just the interior of it and then just add a couple of floors, loads of stuff. And then it just is a guideline to pretty much prompt the conversation and challenge in a way the status quo. Instead of the client comes, they want a new building, off you go with it. It's just to kind of have a conversation of perhaps it isn't the best way to go about it. Perhaps we could do something more that might be economic and carbon wise a better option. So that is how the toolkit goes. Again, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but you pretty much just click on the little cards and it tells you what you could do. And there is a bank of case studies as well that are really good. You can just have at it. And you can also create your own. So you'd add your own case studies and strategies and everything as well. And quickly, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with it. We are technically partners with them, but that was not the point of why I'm talking about it. It's just if you're not familiar with them, even if you are, please just go on their website. They have so much resources available that you can just use, case studies, webinars, even do master courses. They're absolutely amazing. And well, that's pretty much the amount of impact they may have if we apply circular design principles between now and 2030, we could be avoiding 28 megaton of materials, reducing gas emission by 32 megatons, and add over 8,000 hectares of high performing urban habitat as well. So those are really, really good numbers. And that's why the kind of pretty much you go on the website, you click on circular economy, and then it will take you through the enormous amount of resources they have. I will now hand over to Shauna. Sorry, that was way longer than expected. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Leah.
Do you want me to keep sharing or you want to share? Or you just say next slide?
Yeah, if you can carry on sharing, that'd be great.
All right, of course.
Thanks. Wonderful. Yep, so next slide, please. Great. So Leah's just introduced circular economy, its principles, strategic applications in a broad sense, and how Arup support to deliver these along with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. What I'm going to spend the next few slides doing is showing you how we and how us as an industry can translate these specifically to our construction activities. So what I've done on the first slide is taken the circular economy principles and attributed them specifically to construction. So for conserving resources, increasing efficiency, and sourcing sustainably, how we would do this is by designing our buildings and supporting the infrastructure to influence the types and the quantities of materials and other resources that are used for many decades to come. For the circular economy principle of eliminating waste, we can minimize our waste by tackling waste reduction at the source and avoiding materials becoming classified as a waste in the first place. And this is through careful designing, specifications, and material management on site. And the third circular economy principle that is directly supports circular construction is managing our waste sustainably and at its highest value. So when materials do inevitably become a waste, hopefully after a long and valuable life, where they do arise, we manage these as high up the waste hierarchy as practically possible. Next slide, please. So what does this actually look like? We can translate this into a circular construction model. And this circular construction model builds on the requirements of the waste hierarchy, turning it from like a linear ladder that we can see on the screen into a more circular idea. And this is the aim of producing more sustainable outcomes. So the typical waste hierarchy that we may be more familiar with works from most preferred to least preferred at the bottom, with prevention, reuse being the ideals, recycling and recovery being the next steps, and then disposal last. A circular construction model, which can look different for many different types of projects, can replica what we've created on the right-hand side. where it still works in priority order. So refuse, rethink, and reduce, some of the language that Leo used earlier, makes an appearance and is higher up. We then move into reuse and recycle, and then we have recovery. There isn't a disposal element because we're really trying to drive change away from landfill. This circular construction model details the steps of circular approaches for materials and waste management in priority order. And applying this the circular construction model achieves the greatest material costs, savings, and carbon savings compared to that traditional linear economy that we're used to on projects. Next slide, please. So circular construction isn't just the construction activities that happen on site. They start right at the beginning of our project at design, and it's really important to incorporate these as soon as we can. Circular guidance at the moment globally advises us to design buildings for future addressing longevity, flexibility, adaptability, assembly, disassembly, and recoverability. So what does that actually look like for us? Well, broadly, we can group these into 4 different principles: designing out waste, designing for adaptability, designing for longevity, and designing for disassembly, reuse, and recycling. And as we work our way through these, we're working our way through the stages of a construction project. So designing out waste would be our first activity. And here we're looking for things like material optimization. So material selection, reducing the quantity of material standardization in terms of cuts, fills, and requirements. We can then move on to designing for adaptability. Here we're looking at things like off-site construction, the use of modular or relocatable structures, and also flexible layouts. These allow for our construction projects to be more adaptable to future requirements. We then move on to designing for longevity, looking at layering and access to our construction projects. This includes things like looking at alternative materials to be used. So access, for example, could lead on to looking at the components or the coatings that we're using in our construction projects. Access would be for maintenance or end-of-life management. And if something isn't easily accessible, then the likelihood of producing unnecessarily or additional waste increases. And then the last step in the design process is designing for disassembly, reuse, and recycling. Here we're looking at end-of-life strategies. We need as much flexibility as possible to allow for the asset to be adapted for future use or to allow for maximum recovery of those materials. Next slide, please. So as I said, circular construction isn't just a construction activity. It's the maintenance, the future life, and the end of life too. And through specific waste reduction plans and workshops with key stakeholders, records can be kept that inform design and also help to rebrief project teams as the project evolves. Earlier, we mentioned how it is vital to be incorporating the whole supply chain, including stakeholders. Historically, the responsibility of construction waste was generally placed on contractors alone. However, effective designing out waste requires a more collaborative approach with different actions placed on contractors, the clients, engineers, architects, and designers. Communication between all of these project team members is absolutely critical for the success of circular construction. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see some of the strategic checkpoints that we normally tick through on a construction project, and some of the circular construction ideas that might be attributed to those stages. Although this looks linear, these ideas could happen at any stage, super early on and all together, or they could be staggered. So some of these circular economy strategies could ensure that waste and reduction clauses are embedded right at the front of a project within appointments and contracts for everyone involved. So not just contractors, but architects and designers. They should also have a clause that ensures waste is reduced. We can also set reduction and reuse targets along with monitoring a reporting process processes. And these are, again, requirements and standards that we hold our stakeholders accountable to along the design process. We can allow for flexibility to acquire unconventional items. So this is built into design to allow designers and architects to look outside more traditional items that they might use in the construction project. And we can also, and this is normally towards the end of the design phase, is identify a designing out waste champion. So someone that is really going to drive these design and project ideas all the way through into that construction phase. Next slide, please. So this is a London case study from some of the projects that Arup has done within London. We've learnt a lot. And this is specifically around supporting that circular construction throughout design phase. So London at the moment is a really large asset bank of existing buildings where we are looking to either retrofit and refurbish current ones, or we, as we have seen, more likely are looking to demolish and build new, which is more of the linear. Currently, the UK government doesn't really have the legislation or targets in place by law to drive the construction sector into a more circular area. However, the Greater London Authority, which are the authority that manage the core London and its surrounding areas in terms of planning applications, have released the requirement for a circular economy statement, which all planning applications over a certain threshold must provide. This has been in place for 3 years now, and it has we've already seen a huge impact on the industry, a real shift in the focus up that circular economy ladder or round that circular economy cycle to the refuse, rethink, and reduce and reuse elements. The circular economy statement requirement places emphasis on the importance of refurbishment over a new build. And all applicants for the planning application process now have to demonstrate that the benefits of their demolition outweigh the benefits of retrofitting. So there's lots of elements as part of these circular economy statements that we look into. The financial, carbon, energy, and reuse are all considered as part of the circular economy statement. Next slide, please. So to support circular construction from design and also to support circular economy statements and their requirements, Arup deliver a host of tools and documents to support these. The first that we look at is a pre-redevelopment audit for our clients. These audits are a tool for understanding whether the existing building, structure, or material can be retained, either in part or entirely, if it can be refurbished, or if it can be incorporated into the new design. So this is done right at the beginning of design before any requirement for demolition is on the table. If there is a requirement for demolition, either that's an outcome from the pre-redevelopment audit or it's just a requirement as part of the project, we then move on to a pre-demolition audit. And the intent of this pre-demolition audit is to ensure that any potential useful materials are considered for reuse, repurposing, recycling, energy recovery, and diversion from landfill. So the shift from a pre-redevelopment audit is that all our building is an asset bank. And then as we move over to a pre-redevelopment audit, it's the acceptance and understanding that some of our materials will become a waste, what waste there is, and what can we potentially do with them. Once construction is started on site, a site waste management plan supports those activities. It's developed before any demolition takes place, but is updated and is a live document throughout construction activities. It acts as a record of the reuse opportunities that have been won as part of the project and as a record of where waste streams have been managed on or off site. This all underpins new design with reused materials. So we have identified what can be retained. We've identified what might potentially arise. If it arises, we record how we're going to manage it. And if it arises and it can be incorporated within the new design, this is also recorded, and it's a win for the circular economy in circular construction. Next slide, please. So we've spoken about circular construction right from design stage. We're now moving into what this means on site, so the on-site applications of circular construction. Underpinning circular construction is the understanding that construction sites offer an untapped source of surplus building materials that can be redirected to resource scarce environments. So either new projects or ongoing projects that don't have enough new or recycled resource to sustain them. Next slide, please. So what does circular construction look like on site? This circular construction model is adapted from the cycle that we saw previously, specifically for the construction activities now. This can look very different depending on the type of project. But underpinning circular construction typically includes the reclamation and reuse of materials in their original forms, the adaptation of a materials passport. So I've put an asterisk next to a materials passport because this is a new and emerging innovative idea. It's not widely used on construction projects yet. However, the premise is that each building or asset of a new construction project has its own materials passport. These are our digital records that record the types and quantities of material present. Why are these useful and how do they underpin circular economy? Well, throughout the asset's operational life, a materials passport can be a register to help any future maintenance or updates that are required. So if there is a secluded light bulb or a specific type of brick, if those items have a materials passport and someone comes to keep maintenance or do refurbishment in 10, 15 years, when the construction team is long gone, they'll know exactly the type of bulb that's there or the type of brick and mortar that was used previously. This also supports end of life recovery for the same reasons. During construction, we also have stringent waste reduction measures that can be put in place. Typically, we have diversion from landfill metrics, but these for circular construction can cover a wide range of things. You can put quantities of reused assets as part of the project in monetary form or in tonnage form. Energy, water, and carbon savings can also feed into waste reduction measures. Another new and emerging innovative idea to support circular construction are the use of materials exchange platforms. These are typically digital platforms where they act as a broker to connect suppliers or producers of materials that are excess to a current project and people that are in need of those projects. So by connecting those key stakeholders, that excess material never becomes a waste and is then reused, supporting circular construction. And the next circular principle as part of this circular construction diagram is sustainable procurement practices, including reclaimed materials. So procurement hold a key and vital role to underpinning circular construction, whether that's locally sourcing materials, either reused or new, and also engaging in different, as Leah previously mentioned, business structures, so more circular business structures. This can be where items are leased, so construction items are leased, or where they have a more typically a take-back system. So any excess or surplus material is taken back, and these are all built into the procurement practices. Next slide, please. So these are some of our worked Arup project examples of materials reuse, which is as high up as a circular business model as we work with when materials are present on site. Some of the images, the top one are of legato blocks, which, as the name suggests, and they look like, they are large Lego modular concrete blocks and support circular construction because they have a wide variety of applications. They are readily dismantled and easily transported for reuse. The green pallets are part of a UK-wide initiative, which is also expanding into Europe, and there are many other versions across the world of pallet loop, where, as I mentioned before, the procurement business idea behind these are that once pallets are reused or once pallets are used on site, they can be easily reused by the loop company takes them back, and even damaged pallets, which are a common waste stream on construction projects, are taken back and either refurbished into new pallets or other construction applications. And the third image is of a green concrete, which has been trialled in the UK over the last year. Why is it here and how does it support circular construction? Well, looking at alternative materials and construction elements is a key part of disrupting the linear process and moving more towards circular. So this green concrete has a lower energy and carbon requirement. It also is stronger at a less quantity. So that means less waste will be produced when it's poured on site. It also means less maintenance during future use. And then, so from these types of projects that we help drive circular initiatives from, we've learned that there are some drivers and some obvious barriers to circular construction and the change within the industry. So the drivers are gathering benchmarking data, so from existing projects and learning from historic projects, putting appropriate but yet challenging construction, demolition and excavation waste targets as part of the construction contract, introducing materials passports, no matter how big or small, and also working with designers and contractors to look at deconstruction methodologies, so how we can recover materials at end of life. Some of the barriers to circular construction that we've come across: designing without consequence. So typically designing our buildings or our assets with a single purpose in mind, with little flexibility, and also designing with the use of complex or fitted materials and components. So that was going back to my previous point about maintenance and end of life being super important in circular construction. Complex and fixed materials can range from something small like a lamppost if it's concrete based and infitted within a concrete floor, as opposed to just bolted on top. When it comes to a redesign or a requirement for maintenance, we'll have to break out the concrete to remove the lamppost, whereas if it was just bolted onto the top, there would be no impact on the concrete underfloor. Another barrier is to procurement, and as I mentioned, these procurement processes are vital to supporting circular economy and circular construction too. Procurement often looks at short-term costs rather than the whole life value chain, bringing in that maintenance and end of life element too. And procurement typically uses easily accessible or cheaper products, again, not potentially looking at the long-term effects of those. And the last barrier, one of the last key barriers, are the contractors themselves. So having appropriate monitoring and reporting targets in place for them, having speed and cost prioritized, which we currently do, often doesn't allow for the flexibility that a circular construction project might require. And if we're building sourcing material into our contractor contracts, it would give them potentially more flexibility to use alternative material types as well. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to wrap up this element of the presentation by also championing another one of our Arup initiatives, which is called DigiYard, which is a digital marketplace solution which Arup have been developing over the last 5 years, and has been applying it into the Cape Town in South Africa construction, informal and formal construction areas. So the digital marketplace works off an app, and it aims to offer users access to quality materials, saving them time and money, and gives them also access to jobs and wider networks within the construction industry. And it aims to offer building construction waste generators a convenient material outlet stream. It aims to reduce landfill trips and also lowering their carbon footprint. So this very much works like a online materials exchange platform, where if someone is in need of a material, they can upload it to their request to the app, and the network will be notified. And conversely, if a construction project had excess material, they would upload it to the app and it would be shared within the network that that material was available. The app also uses AI to support the users in when they take pictures of their materials or their requirements. The AI support comes in and helps them identify the different types of materials that are present, and also the quantities just based off the photo. So it's a really innovative idea that we have. And underpinning the app, there's also a WhatsApp function where people, the two stakeholders, can directly communicate outside of the app via WhatsApp. So this just helps improve the social value and the accessibility to a wider range of people. Next slide, please. So the DigiYard hasn't been rolled out widely, and DigiYard just simply stands for a digital yard, as in like a materials management yard. At the heart of this project, we are aiming to improve the lives of valuable communities through access and upskilling. The following goals and outcomes have been identified by the DigiYard team so far. And the two primary goals were to provide informal and small-scale builders access to affordable, quality second-hand building material that otherwise might be wasted, go to landfill, or just people don't know about it. And the second goal was to reduce landfill waste and extend the construction materials life cycle. The outcomes that the project has produced to date are social, economic, and environmental. So socially, the app has been improving the quality of materials used in homes, furniture, and crafts for lower income communities in South Africa. The economic benefits have been focusing on upskilling these small scale businesses and their home dwellers, enhancing the income opportunities while simultaneously creating jobs and encouraging entrepreneurship. And the third is the environmental outcome, so encouraging better use of resources and materials, therefore leading on to a lower demand for virgin materials and a long-term reduction in landfill. Next slide, please. So to wrap up the presentation slides as a whole, we've got a couple of case studies from our Nigeria office. So next slide, please. So Arup have a presence within Nigeria and West Africa. We've been present in the area for about 70 years and have over 100 staff members working on a range of projects, which include infrastructure. We have advisory and building services, technical consulting, and planning. Next slide, please. So a couple of the following case studies are Lagos based. This is the RAC Centre, which Arup were involved in the design and construction of. And through specific circular construction strategies, we were able to design the RAC Centre to reduce waste, lower carbon, and decrease the consumption of natural resources. 50% on the concrete and 25% on the rebar, and that was because they were reclaimed or designed out. The next one is the Cornerstone headquarters, again in Lagos. This aims to highlight the efforts for circular construction that were done right from design. So we've got the BIM model in the middle of the slide, where all the key stakeholders could have a really good understanding of what the building would look like and how it could potentially be adapted for future uses. So some of the internal partitions and panels are adjustable and flexible, so they can move and flex to the requirements of the headquarters. And the next slide, please. So this is our last case study. This is the Cornerstone headquarters building whilst it was complete. And we've just got some of the carbon savings from throughout the construction process. So we've got energy, water, and raw materials saved as well. So all really impressive percentages for this building as a whole. And that was the end of our slide deck. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll hand back over to the hosts.
Thank you so much, Shona. I don't know if you can hear me, everyone.
Yeah.
1 minute. Yeah, thank you so much, Shona. Thank you. Very insightful session. I don't want us to waste so much time. I think we're just going to go straight into the questions. But before I do that, I don't know, Sharon, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Good. I just wanted to ask you to speak very quickly about the role that Innovate UK has to play in all of this discussion we're having currently. So if you could just talk about that, just 1-2 minutes, so we can quickly jump into the questions, but I'm going to definitely come back to you. So if you could, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you, Leah and Shona, for that really insightful presentation. As Innovate UK, we have sector-based interventions that we're deploying in Nigeria, and one of them is called the Global Innovation Network. And I happen to lead on the sector for the sustainable construction. Now it's called the UK Nigeria Sustainable Construction Innovation Network. Now, what we're trying to do is, I've been seeing lots of questions in the chat box, and I know there's still questions on lots of people's minds. So what we have tried to do is create that platform where I also understand that one of the key challenges we have is that we work in silos. So somebody's doing something here, there's this activity going on here. Some people are just hearing about DG Yard, even though I know it's not being deployed in Nigeria at the moment. I'm sure some people are just also saying that Arup has done some projects in Nigeria. It might have come as some surprise. So what Innovate UK has done with the Sustainable Construction Innovation Network is to bring all the key players together. Now we're looking at academia, we're looking at the government, because we understand that policy is important, regulation is important. We're looking at standardization of materials, and we have 3 key pillars that we're looking at from the innovation network. And the first is affordable housing. The second is alternative materials for construction, and the last is construction waste management. So when we aggregate all the innovations and all the ideas and all the potential solutions that we can get from all of these 3 pillars, then we can start to see that our challenges are, being solved little by little. And as Innovate UK, we pride ourselves in the fact that there's a deep expertise on the UK side. So, I was with Arup about 3 weeks ago, and we had a conversation in person. It's good to see them again online, and we had some of these conversations talking about, okay, so these things are happening in the UK. How do we bring them to Nigeria? How do we have some of this knowledge exchange, technology transfer? And so that's the role that Innovate UK is playing through the Sustainable Construction Innovation Network.
Thank you so much for that, Sharon. Thank you so much. I'm going to jump quickly into the questions. I think the one question that's been repeated many times over is if we're going to be getting the slide for this presentation. That's how insightful it was. And the question is yes, we will be sending it after the webinar is after we're done with the webinar. So I have a few questions here. So I'm just going to quickly read through. The first one says, this whole circular construction thing sounds pretty cool, but then applying it to our local context, how can design principles be adapted to promote easy disassembly and material reuse in the Nigerian construction projects or the Nigerian context? Leah, I don't know whether you would like to just respond to that very quickly.
I'll give it a go, but I think Shona is best place for it. I think, but I think
quite a layer on it when you're done.
I think very quickly it would be, to some extent, you almost have it easier than us in a way that our clients want something really complicated, really shiny. There's so many people and so many regulations around it that it makes it quite hard for us to do it. But make it disassembled and reusable is also almost the easiest option to some extent. It just has to be considered from the very beginning. So like some materials such as like sealant and bolts that can't be on bolt, or like sealed shut or something like that, those materials cannot be used because obviously it makes disassembly impossible. The only way out of it is to just put a wrecking ball through it. So these things need to be thought at the beginning, but it's nothing hard, it's nothing complicated. It just needs consideration, pretty much. Sure, I'll let you do the technical bit of it.
Thank you so much for that, Leah. So Sean, over to you.
Yeah, no, Leah definitely covered the basics. So the important bits with the design principles, especially for disassembly and materials reuse, which almost are the end of life strategies that we manage our assets with. Considering them upfront is really important, as Leah said, and it can be done as part of the wider designing out waste workshops or strategies that are developed. They are easily adapted to promote disassembly. It's all about standardization, I would say. So looking at the appropriate materials or elements, as Leah had suggested. So something as small as a sealant or a type of glue or something that we're joining our materials with. How readily able are we going to be able to separate those materials in 10, 15, 20 years time? And if we do separate them, is there a life cycle for that material to be reused and recovered again, ideally within the same ecosystem? I'm going to piggyback onto another question because I saw it directed at residential rather than commercial elements. And yes, we have discussed lots of commercial elements. We do go into residential, just not quite as often with Arup, but any of these principles can be readily applied. Again, with our residential elements, looking at how we construct them and if there can be standardization elements put together. So if we have walls, partitions, roofing, ducting, if these are set in standard dimensions, when they are recovered at their end of life, they would be much more easily reused and recovered in another residential project within a local facility, which is the ideal solution in a circular construction world.
I think to add to that, it goes back to the whole thing that is a mindset is just something to consider. So if you pretty much, when you're about to build a new building and you have a client asking you for it, is to think about, first of all, what is it going to be used for? Where is it? And then pretty much go 20, 30, 50 years down the line. Imagine what it would look like then, and then work your way backwards from there. So let's say right now you're building, I don't know, shopping center. 50 years time, then you might not need it, and then work your way backwards of like, what could this building be used then? How would it be taken down? What would the materials look like? Let's say it's really hard to get steel then, and so that we need to salvage it, and then from there work your way back, and then that's how you start designing and planning of how your building would look like, instead of consumers want something really shiny right this instant for a shopping center. And so with that, exactly what we're going to build, like that's just so present, so narrowed focus to some extent. It's tunnel vision. So it's about asking the bigger question and looking the peripheral vision, pretty much.
Thank you so much for that, Leah. There's a question I think we can, I mean, it's like a layer on what it is that's just been asked. And someone said, but this is about behavioral changes or influences. So the question here says, how can user behavior be influenced in accepting recycled building materials? I don't know if you, I don't imagine that the UK had that sort of challenge. And if it did, I mean, on projects that you've done, how did you influence the end users' acceptance or behavior?
Oh, we do. I mean, it's,
Wow.
I'd say to some extent almost one of the worst challenges, because I mean, circular economy, technically it's associated with waste, which is not very sexy, especially when it's like really high price, premium kind of infrastructure. So people don't really want that. They want the very, brand new type of marble that's everything is classy and shiny and new. Usually it's premium associated with new, so it's quite hard to say, here is a building made of waste, off you go. So I think, a lot of it does go down to consumer behavior, and not only consumer, but also the client behavior as well. I mean, just human behavior. We need to demystify the fact that, wealth is waste, and waste is wealth, and the waste of someone is the wealth of something else. And that in the long term, it is better, it could be more efficient, it can work better, and there's also financial value to it to some extent. because I mean we see it in so many other industries as well, that consumers' behavior, let's say, all the movements of caring about the planet and stuff. So many companies are having troubles following with that because customers care more and more. So if the building, like let's say where you live or where you set up your shop or your offices is really carbon intensive, for example, they may actually decrease the value in the long term more than better it. That was my answer. Shauna, if you have the answers to that
Yeah,
one.
I think that answered that question. So there's another question here that says, we kind of all agree on the recycle, on the need to reuse and recycle materials. But the question here is, someone needs to know the constituent of green concrete. That's the first question.
Shauna,
And then
that's
the
yours.
second question, yeah, wow. And the second question is, in terms of cost savings, how much do you think that, just a ballpark figure, do you think that Arup has been able to save in percentage since he adopted the circular economy mode of construction? I imagine that this question is for the Nigerian context. So maybe Shauna will take this one. Okay, all right, Shauna, over to you.
Great, thanks. So I will keep it brief because there's definitely resources that I can share offline. So the green concrete isn't an in-house product. It's produced by an external company that I can share the details for. However, in the application that Arup have supported or been part of is a large construction project, so one of the largest infrastructure projects in the UK at the moment, and it's the redevelopment of a existing energy from waste facility into a new energy recovery facility. And the on-site contractors have used the green concrete in things like piling walls, foundations, external concrete elements, so like plinths. So the applications are wide ranging, and the technical spec stands up against current concrete British standard requirements as well. So although it's a new and emerging product, it has been years in the making, and the project's really driving circular economy and innovation by applying the green concrete in such a wide variety of manners. This project will really be a test of the materials. So I'm sure in 10, 15, 20 years time, there'll be case studies on how well it stood up. But the carbon savings, the water savings, the energy savings, the environmental impact reductions of using the green concrete far, far outweigh the initial upfront slight cost increase, which the green concrete is more. Again, I don't have the specific figures to hand, but I can definitely share more information on those.
Oh, fantastic. We'll be looking forward to sharing that data and information. And this brings me to my next question. And this is for the Arup projects in Lagos. Questions been asked here about the experience, and you might be able to speak on this or maybe not, but I mean, if you're not able to give us feedback, then maybe the team in Lagos can do that later on. We can share that with everyone. It says, what was your experience in getting building approvals and permits from the government bodies in Nigeria, considering these new techniques or materials that may have been deployed on the project?
Unless, Shauna, you've got any knowledge of that, I think we'll have to take that one offline and then get somebody from the Lagos office to answer it.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that in terms of gaining the permissions. On the second half of that question, in terms of like the new products and techniques, none of the projects that we've currently completed in Africa as a whole, as I'm maybe corrected on this, are deploying any new products or techniques. This is just rethinking the current systems that we do. So the repurposing or the reuse of steel, concrete, and timber elements has been done for decades. It's just what that now looks like to support circular construction and taking it a step further. So that goes back to elements such as like standardization, the way we are fitting the fixtures and the layers and the elements. So we're still using the same products, we're still using the same techniques as in construction techniques, but the design of how we marry those two is slightly different and changes now. So it's things that have a large application, but also a small application. So there is an overhaul needed to turn us into a circular construction sector, but it's not potentially as revolutionary as changing the products and the kind of techniques that we're used to. It's tweaking them.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I have one question here also, and it's around the life cycle of for materials. The question is there a life cycle for materials under the circular economy model? So basically what this person is asking is, can we have, is there a place to get free information on end of life of materials or some sort of circular economy toolkit? Is a platform that the listeners can get onto so access this information.
Lee, do you want to talk about the toolkit or?
Sorry?
I was just asking Leah if she wanted to talk about the toolkit.
Yeah.
So
Leah.
I think yes, but I'm not quite sure if it answers the question as in they're asking like a life cycle, so it will actually determine whether your material has reached end of life, like something really technical. Yeah, I think that's what they meant more. The circular building toolkit is more, it helps you, it's a guide to help you design and make a decision in terms of how circular your building can be. But I think it would be something almost like Madassa, like a digital material platform that will actually tell you how circular your building and your material are. Am I getting this wrong, Shona?
No, yeah, I think that sounds.
I think you answered the question.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's a question for you here, Sharon. And it says, I found your presentation at Innovate UK quite interesting. The question is, how can educational institutions in Nigeria be better integrated into knowledge transfer efforts to prepare the future generations for circular construction?
Okay, I think first of all, we need to elevate sustainability to a level of importance.
Right.
That's what we first need to do, because education has transcended the four walls of the institutions. It's all about awareness and sensitization. I'm just going to give a very quick example. I was really impressed with what's happening in the plastic space. I happened to visit GIVO. GIVO is a plastic recycling facility in Lagos, Nigeria. And they had their recycling facility inside a secondary school. So the kids at the grassroots age are already coming up with the mindset that there is wealth in waste. So nobody just takes plastics and the first thing they want to do is take it to the landfill or just dump it somewhere else. So they're already equipped with that knowledge that there's wealth in this waste, and if I can recycle, we're trying to build a future of sustainability. Now we can also start to bring that into construction as well. So the question is, starting from you listening to me in this webinar, I'm sure this is not the first, or maybe this is the first of many sessions you've attended. What have you done with the information you've gotten? How have you passed it across to the next person? That's also education, because most of the time we just want to go straight from the top. We have the academia. I mean, academia is very, very important when it comes to sustainability and circularity in Nigeria. So I think one other example that I picked from, I happened to interact with University College London, and we saw that after students had done their research, they had like 1 year secondment in industry. So they took this research that they had done into the industry and actually started to deploy and test. Now, our educational system has a lot of work to do. Like I said, it starts with awareness, just like the previous question that was asked. How do we shift our mindset from, waste is waste? How do we start to bring treasure out of waste? It starts from developing those models. It starts from changing our mindsets. I was having a conversation a while ago, and it just dawned on me that in Nigeria, our construction is mostly wet. you know, and then you have the masons and the older guys telling you, oh, the strength of my building is in how, you know, thick and how formidable the blocks are, you know, is very strong. But then when you start to tell them about alternative materials, then you get questions like, do you know when I started building? Before they gave birth to your father's father, I have been building, of course. But then by the time we start that mindset shift, bring up that awareness, you know, start to have, like Innovate UK is doing currently, we have knowledge exchange programs, we have webinars, we organize side events just to educate the public and let them know that there's something that's actually really valuable here and we can start to adopt these practices. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, I believe it has. And thank you so much for that. I can testify that on all of the platforms that I've learned from you, I mean, I entered there with a chip on my shoulder thinking that I knew everything, but then I get onto your platforms and I'm properly schooled, and I leave very different with more information. So I have one more question, actually, 3 more questions. There is one question for Shauna, you might be able to answer this one. It says, is there a database or some platform? So this is 2-pronged, it's for us and also for Arup. So did you, for the projects with Arup did in Lagos, the RAC Center, for example, has it been put on any particular platform to showcase what it is that was achieved on that project? Do you want to just speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on our Arup website. So
Okay.
we have a whole case studies resource available for global projects. And the ones that I presented in Nigeria are on there and they will have all the technical content.
Okay.
They'll also have the appropriate local Arup contact for you to get more information from as well.
All right, fantastic, thank you. And then the next question is for Mr. Waniko. Mr. Waniko, our audience would like to know what we're doing to showcase more of this sort of projects. So for example, are there any platforms that we're working on at the moment? I would like you to just speak on that because I'm moderating today. Mr. Waniko? Okay, I'd like him, okay.
Jackie, you just want me to talk by force, but
Wow.
I would have handed that over to Emmanuel. I think it's one of his projects. We are working on a directory of products and services, which should cover part of what the question relates to. We want to create a digital repository where people can come in and upload information on projects, products, and services related to carbon neutrality, circularity, resilience, and so on, so that that information is readily available. And that speaks to something that Sharon referred to, which is people don't know what is available out there. People don't know what they are doing. So if we have all the information in one place, it becomes easy. If you're looking for a product or a solution for a particular challenge, then you go there and you can quickly find it or not find it and know that at least probably it doesn't exist. Well, not that it doesn't exist, at least it doesn't exist in our ecosphere. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think, thank you so much for that response, sir. Matter of fact, I've seen a number of people mention different platforms. I've seen one Panteca, I've seen all sorts of other platforms. But like Sharon said, we tend to work in silos. So I think the onus is also on us to, and we'll be doing that, to just kind of aggregate all of these different platforms into a central place where people can just go to and get all the information that they require. This is
sorry, let me just jump in. There are quite a number of products out there that give this information, but one of the major challenges we discussed with Sharon over this is concerns and questions over what is this product, what it is quality, what are its technical characteristics, things like this. A lot of these platforms don't really answer these questions, and these questions are very important for people like you and me, built environment professionals who are being convinced to adopt a product and use it in a project. So we need to address these issues about quality, technical characteristics in any platform that we're developing. That's one of the things we want to, one of the challenges we want to try and solve with the directory we're developing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So I have another question here. It says, this question will be for you, Leah. It says, so circular construction sounds awesome, but with all the moving parts, who would you say are the real movers? Who are the most valuable players for making this happen, in your experience?
It depends on what you're building to some extent, if it's genuinely building or if it's something more infrastructure, I'd say, such as like data centers or rail.
Right.
But I think what I call the client, but the investors, to some extent, they have to be open to it, first of all, because they're the one allocating and deciding time and budget. So convincing them almost is usually the hardest part, especially in terms of if there is a regulation backing you up, you'd have to convince them in terms of legal liability, warranties. Let's say if you wanted to construct your building and reuse materials elsewhere, if it's not part of a supplier's take back scheme or something, if it's kind of you coming up with this, then there will be, it's like starting to be worried about who's liable if something happens, who holds a warranty, these kind of things. That's where circular business models come in place and are very critical. And procurement as well, in terms of project managers, that's how I ended up on it. It's so including in contracts from the beginning, procurement, making sure that you have numbers saying you will have to reuse X amount of materials at the end of that building life cycle, or your procurement will have to be X% secondhand or stuff like that. But then also comes a challenge of you can't guarantee 100% of reused materials because there is no such guarantee. If it's a secondhand market, is not as regulated as, you know, you go on whatever platform and you just buy new things. So that's where the challenges come. But so those could be barriers. Designers 100%, although that one is a yes and no. They usually are the most flexible ones because they're designers and they absolutely love playing around with their design, but sometimes a bit too hard on. Like they just really want their design to go as it was, as it is sitting in their head, and you'd have to challenge them and really walk them through where you're trying to go to. And the last one will be contractors, 100%. Because if you can go through all the hoops, you can finally get everything approved. And then if they are not trained to deconstruct, if they're not trained to handle all these things, then, I mean, we had one example where they literally just smashed everything. We finally agreed to have everything deconstructed and they arrived and everything was smashed on the floor. They broke everything trying to take it down. So that one would definitely be a big part as well. Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I have one more. This will be the last question because we're kind of running out of time. There's a question from Alan Akimbola. He says, what incentives does the Nigerian government? I'm going to throw this to you, Shona, but then maybe you can speak on it from the UK context. And then we can see, I mean, we are advocating for greener buildings. Maybe somewhere in our advocacy, we can present some of these options to the government, for example. But the question here is, what incentives does the Nigerian government have in place to encourage sustainability and energy efficiency for organizations, for example, that have used maybe circular materials in the building of their projects? So what are the tax rebates? Can you point us to useful resources about these initiatives, if you have any in the UK?
Yeah, great. So yeah, I would definitely be able to speak from a UK perspective, and maybe some of our Nigerian colleagues would be able to provide, the Nigerian government input. I will keep this brief because I know we are short of time. So there are a whole host, range of incentives that the UK government have in place to encourage sustainability and energy efficiency. They range from the carrot, so incentives that there are tax rebates in place. There are we've got currently a range of policies that are coming into play. The largest one that I can think of is a deposit return scheme. So lots of these kind of carrot initiatives have financial, commercial implications. There are stick incentives. So carrot is obviously enticing, stick is kind of you have to comply with it. And these range from policy requirements, legislative requirements, planning requirements, which is kind of what we touched on earlier, that your planning application for your new project will not be approved by the appropriate parties if it does not adhere to these sustainability requirements. And then there's a small band that fits in the middle for the innovators and the leaders in the sector to comply with off their own backs, in theory. So this can range from like building accreditation. So if you adhere to certain sustainability or energy efficiency requirements, your project or your company will be accredited, and you will then be able to hold that badge and use it for any onward future projects, which could result in financial, I guess, or commercial gain. So yeah, there is a whole range. I would suggest the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website as a really good resource for looking at what that translates like, not only on a construction, but also on an organizational, because I think that's where the question come from, on an organizational basis, what they can do. Ellen MacArthur supports all of the players throughout the whole circular economy, not just construction based. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Sharon, one last question for you, and then we can close. I'm mindful that we also didn't start early and people need to get off. It says, the question here is there a possibility that UK Innovate can help in conducting and facilitating the research? And I think that this is a follow-up question to you know, just aggregating like a repository or a central place where people can go in to get information, and the points that Mr. Waniko had layered on about not getting certain data for those sort of materials. So would you like to just speak on that?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's something we are keen on facilitating, and not just facilitating or creating an atmosphere for you to do this research. We also have some programs that will allow you to like deploy pilots, you know, prototypes of some of these case studies that you have. So currently we run an open innovation program, and that's connecting like solution providers with challenge holders. Now, when we talk about challenge holders, we're looking at large corporates that have maybe you know, most of these challenges that their supply chain, traditional supply chains have not been able to solve. So for example, in the construction sector, you have a big corporate that has, you know, maybe some of these alternative materials we're talking about, or it doesn't always only have to do with maybe buildings, it could have to do with paintings. Okay, for example, we just launched a challenge with Beja Paints, and that's the valorization of expired paints. Now, the kind of solution providers that we're looking for range from academia to startups to research. So this is the way that we not only encourage research, we also encourage deploying pilot tests, because I understand that when it comes to construction is a bit more technical and people are more convinced by what they see. So there's a lot of talk. That's something that I need to point out. There's a whole lot of talk in the sector. What we want to see is action. What we want to see is models. We want to see prototypes that have actually been deployed. We want to see, you know, things that have set the pace. So definitely Innovate UK is very, very ready to support research and innovation.
All right, thank you so much for that. I think that this is where we'll be closing our webinar. I just wanted to thank all of us again, the attendees, the panelists, Leah, Shona, Sharon, Mr. Waniko, and also apologize for the late start. We had technical issues that we were able to just get sorted eventually. So on the presentation slides, we will send that right after our webinar. And any other information that we get from the panelists that we've promised to send through, we'll do that. We also do have one announcement. I would like for our president, Mr. Waniko, to just talk about our upcoming event in July. Mr. Waniko, would you please do us the honor? Thank you.
Okay. On the spot once more, very quickly, we have our Future Cities Summit coming up July 16th to 19th. It's going to be a major event. Those of you who are privileged to be part of last year's summit, this year is going to be bigger and better. Why? Because Africa is coming to Nigeria, coming to Lagos. We are co-locating it with the Africa Green Building Summit. So that means that from the 16 green building councils from across Africa will be coming to Lagos for this event. The theme is building resilient futures. We are going to be looking at how to integrate carbon neutrality, the circular economy, and inclusive urban development to create a vision for what our future cities should look like. So I encourage you to sign up and register. The website is up and running. It's futurecities.ng. Register. It's free for now, but well, we're tempted to reconsider that, but for now it's still free. So sign up while it's free before we change our minds. And if you'd like to come on board as a partner or sponsor also, please reach out to partnership@gbcn.org.ng. I think I'll stop there. We're 5 minutes over. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you all in July, and maybe Leah and Shona too. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Danjuma. Thank you, everyone. And to everyone who believe they didn't have their questions answered, we apologize, but we're happy to answer them if you could just send us an email at info@gbcn.org.ng. Thank you very much, and do have a fantastic rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.